All right, so welcome one and all present here to the 8th session. Oh, sorry, 7th? 8th? Eighth session of TTT. We are very pleased to have you over here. So since there are a few new faces, I'm going to start by doing a small introduction to thinking and the initiative that is TTT before we dive into what we have planned for today. So thinking was started by Ambika, our founder, in the year 2020. Yes, we are a pandemic baby. And thinking was started with the aim of making good quality English language teaching accessible to everybody, especially people in 2 and 3 tier cities who really need that, little push of the language to get places in life. And thankfully, we've been doing very well, even though we were started in the pandemic. Since we do complete remote teaching, we've been able to get students from all around the world. And most importantly, we have a lot of fun doing it. TTT in specific was started again by Ambika because she felt the need as an online educator to help other people who are in the same area of education, because the shift was very sudden because of the pandemic and so many people were still struggling. So she thought that a community like TTT, which stands for Teacher Talk Time, would really benefit like-minded teachers from this similar community, similar backgrounds, or very different backgrounds to come together and just, talk and share and discuss anything and everything to do with teaching. And we've had 7 really successful sessions, and I'm sure this 8th one will be just as successful as the previous ones. And so I'm just going to do a small introduction to our team. So like I said, Ambika is our founder of Thinking. And then we have Aparna, who is Ambika's mom, but more importantly, our academic director of Thinking. And then we have Soorya, who is one of our ESL trainers. And then Smita, who is our newest member of Thinking. In fact, she was fully onboarded only like 2 days ago, but she's already doing such a wonderful job with us. And I'm Nikita, and I've been with Thinking for about a year now. And every day with these guys is such a joyful experience. And I'm really glad that there are so many of us who can share the experience of TTT as well. Okay, so a little into what we are going to be doing today. Usually, for those who don't know, TTT has a structure that we follow where we do a small mini workshop for about 30 to 35 minutes, followed by a resource review by one of the members, and then followed by, it's open to the audience for any question, answers, anything that they would like to discuss. So today, our mini workshop is conducted by someone I think who's a very close friend to Aparna, Miss Shailaja Mani. And I'm going to give you a small introduction about her. So she started her career many years ago as a French trainer at the, and I'm sorry if I butcher the pronunciation of this, Alliance Française. If I did badly, I'm very thankful that you're doing a pronunciation workshop with us so I can improve on that. She moved from teaching French as a foreign language to teaching English as a second language. And according to her, the best part of the profession is that it allows her to interact with people from all walks of life, speaking a myriad of languages, but with one abiding goal of learning something and getting ahead in life. And during her 10-year stint at the British Council, Shailaja has had the opportunity to become a teacher trainer working with young, newly qualified teachers. She now works freelance, and her classes often have users from different corners of the globe joining in on virtual platforms. And not to mention, her qualifications include a Delta and a master's in ELT. And she has some other interests, which include reading and traveling. And Shailaja, we're absolutely delighted to have you here and for you to share with us all of your knowledge that we are eagerly going to soak up. Yes, so after Shailaja, the resource review will be done by one of our Thinking's members, Soorya. But now I'm going to hand it over to Shailaja to start her workshop.
Thanks, Nikita. Right. So let me start off already. Okay. So can we very quickly think about what intelligibility means to you? So you can just unmute and speak and tell me what you think intelligibility is, in your opinion.
I feel like intelligibility is when what you're spoken is understood by the listener.
Okay. And why is this session focused on intelligibility rather than, say, aspects of connected speech or word stress or sentence stress or something like that? Any thoughts on that? Yeah.
I think because I think English as a language is not so much, doesn't belong to just one country or one area anymore. It's become so widespread. So there are so many different versions of it, and nothing can be set in stone as right and wrong. So maybe because there are so many different ways to approach it, it's all that matters is that you're understood and not that, there's so much so that you're doing it the right way. Is at least what I think. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, it's perfect. So basically, that was the background to it. We are not talking about English as a foreign language or English as a second language anymore. We're talking of English as a lingua franca. So we are looking at the ELF core, and we are using that as something to explore a little bit further, because it's not very common to do that. Most of us, while we teach, fall back on the usual, sentence stress, word stress, connected speech features, and teaching the phonemic chart. So basically, in today's session, I just hope to give you all an introduction to thinking a little out of that box and maybe think of what really needs to be focused on. All right, so here's what we'll do. We'll start by thinking about what we already know. Then we'll discuss what kind of problems learners face, followed by what we can teach based on the discussion. And then a little quick sort of loop to what we know now after the session. Yeah? Okay, so let's define pronunciation. Anybody? How do you define pronunciation? I can't see the list of names, so I'm not able to nominate people. So let's ask Josie, because I can see a few faces on the screen. Yeah. Josie, would you like to take that? How would you define pronunciation?
Sorry, Shailaja, are you asking me?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Sorry, you're just a little bit faint. I can't hear you
okay.
very badly. Yeah, that's okay. Maybe it's just me. Yeah, pronunciation, good question. It's yeah, the way that people speak. I don't know. It's 7:30 p.m. I should know. I'm a teacher. I'm a teacher.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Yeah. Okay, I'm a student now. Yeah, so it's the sounds that they make in order to communicate with somebody so that they can be understood.
Right. Anybody else would like to share something else? Any other ideas? Sooryakala, go ahead.
I think I'm not saying the right way to say a word, but then how a word should sound, or at least the dynamics in which the words should be said or read out loud.
Okay, all right. Anybody else?
Articulating the sounds
okay.
or the words.
Okay.
To be understood.
Okay.
So to add to that, the rhythm and the tone or the tune of a particular language, that's also a big part of pronunciation.
Okay, yeah, prosody. Yeah. Okay, so here's the definition of what pronunciation is. Yeah. So the challenge, of course, is the bit which says correctly. So what exactly is correctly is anybody's guess now. Okay, so I'm going to put you in breakout rooms and I'd like you to discuss the pre-session questionnaire. Hopefully you got a chance to look through it. It's not a question of who's right, who's wrong, or what the answers are. It's about what you think is the right answer, what you believe is the right answer. Yeah. Okay. So give me a minute while I put you in breakout rooms. Abika, are you doing that?
Sure, I can do that.
Okay.
How many groups would you like, Shailaja? 2?
There are 10 participants, so 3 groups should be fine.
3? Okay. Okay. Yeah, Meghna is also joined. Hi, Meghna.
Good afternoon. I'm so sorry I was late. I was just driving back from work.
Okay, so in your groups, could you nominate one person to take notes so that you can summarize what you discuss?
Sure.
Yeah, so I've opened up the groups.
Okay, thank you.
I think, yeah, I think you also got allotted to, assigned to a group.
Yeah.
So I will go into that group instead. So
Sure.
will you be able to keep switching if you're the co-host?
Yeah, I'll try. I don't know if I will be able to. It just says, yeah, I think it says join for all 3, so I should be able to.
Yeah, 1 second. Let me just quickly check.
Okay.
Yeah. I think I'll just make you the host probably. Oh no, then I won't be able to help you manage.
Right.
Okay, fine. So okay, I'll go into the room either ways and then
Sure.
yeah.
Sure.
Then from this is what I would think. That would be my guess. Yeah.
So maybe, so then I think, yes, true. We are sort of attuned to our L1, or we pick it up much easier and we can, I suppose, I don't know if the Shailaja, you can tell us if this fits, but if it's a language, you know, if it's your first language or whatever, then even if someone doesn't speak it very clearly, you can still kind of guess what they're saying or figure it out. But in another language, you can't.
You know, when I feel like each language has its own sort of musical value to it. Like you can pick out a Malayali very clearly from a group of people in a room because of the way they speak more than the actual words they use, right? So
yeah, but when we talk about knowing a language, it's also about shared cultural perspectives, shared contexts.
Yeah.
Even we understand other Indians no matter how thick the accent because we share this cultural background. Whereas maybe Josie will find it a little bit trickier to follow everything that we're saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Second one. Again, I think that's similar to what you said, isn't it? That there's a social aspect. Social and a shared, what do you call it? A shared something? Shared experience, that's the word.
Yeah.
So sometimes that will help things be more, like if as English teachers, we say things like TTT.
Yeah.
You know,
Absolutely.
it's
understanding lingos and yeah.
So I think that might be so true.
Who's
Who's taking notes, by the way?
I am.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay.
More diverse the range between them. More difficult.
Yeah, I think so.
I think so. Absolutely.
Just
I think
physically being able to make the sound.
For example, I think I learned this when I was doing Celta that in the Arabic language, you don't have a certain sound which I don't know what it is. I mean, Sita, you should be able to
No, I know
tell
what
me.
you mean. I think
They
the
don't
per
have
and the b.
they don't have the per word distinction, so they don't really realize there's a P and B.
That's what they say bark.
I find it even in our classes among Tamil students, there are a lot of the sh, sir, even per,
ch, and k, g, and her.
Right.
They're all the same. It's only one sound. And just pronouncing, like in Tamil, it's hard to say if you're a Tamil speaker, it's hard to say the o sound.
Yeah,
so it ends up becoming an ah sound. Or the r that Tamil and Malayalam have that other languages don't have.
Yeah.
So I suppose it's a production thing.
Aware of each vowels.
That depends.
I'm not really so sure about this.
Same. I think
I wouldn't say
it's a
like
problem.
number one. Yeah, it's not like the number one thing.
I think the ones they mispronounce, maybe you can
We need to, yeah.
do a little bit of more detailed
Because I
work
think it
over
can
there.
be quite discouraging if you start.
Absolutely.
We
yeah.
have taught the phonemic chart in the past, and I'm not sure how helpful that is always. Says me a few years later. So yeah, so we're unsure about that one. That's our answer. Unsure. It depends. Okay. Pronunciation should be an integral part of language. That I think I agree.
Yes.
Yes.
Given the description we've just discussed, it's not just pronunciation as in the phonemic chart, it's pronunciation as in intelligibility.
Intelligibility, yes, absolutely.
From which level would you start?
I think right from, I don't know about beginner, but from elementary.
I thought elementary also I find maybe challenging.
But isn't it important? Because pronunciation, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, shouldn't it be receiving pronunciation as well as producing it? So being able to recognize and hear things. So then an elementary
and
or
I think
beginner
that
student
with an elementary, they learn a lot of new words as they speak, as they, study or learn the language. So when you teach a word, you automatically teach the pronunciation. So even if you're not going into an in-depth, like, oh, this is the phonemic sound, you are doing some sort of teaching there.
Even just
So
saying it, demoing a word.
yeah, absolutely.
So maybe more important at lower levels, because otherwise they end up learning the wrong thing and then you end up trying to fix it for years.
And unlearning is really difficult.
Especially something like pronunciation, where it's a muscle, almost like muscle memory. I keep doing this, sorry. I've been doing this for the past 10 minutes. Okay.
Ambika, another minute and then you can close.
Sure, yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I can do it too, right?
You can?
Sorry. Yeah, I can.
Okay, number F.
Activity is valuable as classroom time.
Words individually and how this pronunciation change?
I'm not too for it. Yeah.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Because no one ever walks around saying words individually, do they? Or listening to words individually, unless it's a specific context.
Yeah.
And I also think that sometimes you pick up how it works in a sentence when you just speak. It doesn't really have to be taught a lot, maybe at the lower levels, but once you come to a little higher level, when they hear you use it in a sentence, they sort of pick up the natural flow from that. Yeah.
It's another thing when you're teaching pronunciation of an individual word. Sometimes if you drill it too often, your pronunciation changes. The more
I
you
have
drill,
noticed
I've
this
made that mistake.
happen to me. Yes.
And then it just distorts into something else.
Never try teaching the difference between were and were. Because ever since I did that,
it's the worst. Now I can't do it either. I Pramadama say like kiss your W's and bite your B's, but then I do the opposite anyway. Okay, G. I mean, when you ask the question, say the statement like this, I'm sort of leaning towards saying I disagree. In that, is it important to teach them to use features of connected speech? Then it becomes very sort of artificial, doesn't it? Very stilted, like the gonna wanna. I hate that. Because it sounds like gonna wanna, and you can't say it, that's not how you say it naturally. So that is connected speech, but it's just
I feel like I don't have the authority to speak on this. I've never done it, so I can't really say if it's important or not. So
maybe it's important at higher levels to help them be able to recognize it so that they can distinguish when they're listening to, if they're listening to a podcast, for example, then they need to be able to hear speech in long stretches. So then maybe that being able to recognize it or understand that it exists.
Like you said, I choose the topic to do this. For instance, in presentation skills in a business English class, stress would be important there. Or, doing a little bit of connected speech, but I don't use it like right through, in my lessons.
Okay, I'm going to close breakout rooms. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay, we have 60 seconds. The last two.
The last
where
one.
to use variable track time to address problem areas and learners in it. Only problem areas.
I think so.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Largely.
Yeah.
Yeah, unless there's something very specific you're teaching. Helping students themselves overcome gaps. Yes, I agree 100%. Like knowing how to talk around something. Like if you don't know how to say something, then knowing how to say something around it, or to spell it out, or find other strategies to get the information across. I think that's more important.
Yeah, that is true, because I notice, I mean, with the students that I teach, if they really do struggle, they immediately switch to a different language, which shouldn't always be the backup, you know, they should figure out how to say it in another way. But yeah, this makes sense.
So then we agree with that one.
Yes.
Okay. Agreed, or what was the deal? Yeah. You don't have to recap everything that was said.
Mostly we were on the same page for most of the points, except few. Like only two, I think. Only for 2 or 3 we were like not agreeing. Not all were agreeing.
Okay, which 2 or 3 were those?
It was fourth one, D, and then H.
Okay. Okay. All right. The other rooms?
I think they've not joined yet.
No, we're back. We had a good discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
So did you agree? Did you disagree? Can the person who you nominated to take notes please summarize?
Sure. I will. Sita, Ambika, please feel free to pitch it in case I miss anything out. But we mostly had agreed on all of the points. We all had different ideas of why we agreed to it, but we mostly agreed with it. We did have a question about the first one. We didn't understand what you meant by frequency as such. We had a different understanding. We just wanted to make sure that that's what you meant. So Sita and I, especially, we discussed that maybe it's like, you know, in some languages, for example, like Russian or German, you have like most of the noise comes from the throat. It's a deeper language than anything else. So is that what you meant, or what exactly?
We will get, so the point of this questionnaire is we get through everything, the whole workshop, and at the end you should have answers for everything. Okay, so there is a point where we will discuss this in particular. So what you said kind of fits the bill, but not completely.
Okay, all right. Yeah, otherwise I think that in a lot of areas we basically agreed that it depends on the students you're teaching, the levels you're teaching, what purpose you're teaching for, and you think about that, and then you incorporate the different levels of, or the need for pronunciation in the class. We agreed teaching pronunciation is important, but to what extent, what kind, everything depends on the purpose and the student.
Okay, and in the third room? That was Aparna and
Surya.
We agreed most of it, and there were a few discussions along the number 2. We were talking about non-verbal cues in terms of, and the difference in cultures when we communicate and how that could affect the learner or the speaker. And also for the range, the difference in range between the L1 of the learner and the learner actually learning. We kind of had a point where most of us agreed, but also wanted to add to that, saying that if L1 was the only language that the learner knows, then I think it'd be more difficult. But we also felt that if the learner is already bilingual and was learning English as maybe the third language, perhaps the gap could be less in that. That was a perspective that we had, but otherwise mostly we agreed with the rest of it.
Okay. There was just one point made in one of the rooms about teaching connected speech for reception rather than production. Yeah, and I think that's a really valuable point to make, because not all of pronunciation is about speaking in a particular way. It's also about understanding what somebody else says. So if they work in an international context, they don't have to produce the intrusive R, but it's good for them to be able to understand that an intrusive R doesn't change the word, it only changes the pronunciation. So pronunciation as reception rather than production. Yeah? So that's one thing I'd like to put out there. So, okay. Let's move on and let's look at problems that learners face. I promise we'll come back to the questionnaire with any doubts that you might have and clarify everything before we end. Okay. So what kind of problems do they have? We're going to play this like a game. I would like you to think of problems, and I would like you to share your ideas. Aparna, could you make a note of who says what in the chat box, so that by the end of it we can assign points to them? Yeah. So Aparna or Ambika, one of you, whoever types
Ambika is
faster.
better.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you could just keep track and just summarize what a person says, so we can put it in the chat box and then give them points at the end if what they say is on the list, on my list. Okay. All right. So let's take it away. What kind of pronunciation problems do learners face? You get 10 points for each correct answer.
Can I start first?
Sure.
Yeah, go ahead.
Before anyone steals my idea. I think certain sounds are difficult to produce in different languages. So if you are a Tamil speaker, then you might not be able to say the "or" sound, and you end up saying it like an "ah" sound. So that might be a problem, both in production and reception.
Next me.
Aparna, do you have the answers?
No.
No, I didn't.
The sir and sure sounds. The sir, sure, sir.
Okay.
Those three sounds are quite difficult for the students.
Okay. So producing certain sounds,
yeah, specific
understanding
sounds.
certain sounds are a problem.
Understanding and producing both.
Okay.
Yeah.
Chitra?
I think that's what I was going to say. But learners sometimes don't hear the sounds that are not there. For example, "je." So I will be saying "je" and I will be saying "je." "Je." So they're not hearing the difference.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay. Sooryakala?
Yeah, so I'm just going to summarize that, I think, and say the L1 influence of the student, whoever it is, and the influence of the L1 on their speaking, even if they try to adapt it. I think when they use it, for example, North Indian speakers have an end sound that's not an sound. They don't change the sound, but they add an extra sound. And depending on which region they're from, they will complete the word in the right pronunciation, but they would at the end of the sentence add an extra sound, which so when they're speaking in continuous speech, they would connected speech, they would be adding an extra sound which is not supposed to exist there. So I think.
Okay. Anybody else?
If I could just add to what Sooryakala said.
Sure.
Not just the end of the sound, but they also add an E in when they have to pronounce the words starting with S. So they say "is school," "is skill," "is student."
It's the
That's
SK.
something I think
Sorry to
that's
interrupt. SK, ska.
Yes. Another thing that I mean, again, of the MTI is the influence is the A sound. I have Vietnamese students who don't have an A in their language, so they say I.
Okay.
So they cannot pronounce A. They say I instead of A.
Okay.
So I think that's also because of the L1 influence.
Okay.
And
I was actually just gonna say a very similar point to Ranjini, that some languages don't have some sounds that they have in English, so they have difficulty adapting to that. This is what I was gonna say.
Okay, Sita?
I think pronouncing sounds. So when they're learning a new language, they tend to over enunciate, and then it sounds like they're putting on an accent, or it sounds very unnatural, and yeah, it actually makes it exactly. I was just going to say it starts becoming really bad.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
So, ma'am, may I?
Yeah, of course.
So I teach young learners. I teach in primary school, and there I have some students who are German, Italian, and South Korean. And the problem that I see that they face is some of them are better speakers, and so they mix up with W's and V's and P, B, and VB that they can't understand, and they also do stress on the ed, like okay, played might not be a turned, and those kind of, I think, which may be colloquially spoken in their languages, and South Korean, yeah.
Or it could be a generalization of a rule that they know. So, and the pronunciation for past tense is quite a common problem. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else? Okay. I think broadly we've got one or two categories of answers really. Yeah. One was about sounds, people not perceiving, registering the sound, or therefore not being able to produce it either. And we've got things which are to do with mother tongue influence. So we've got these two broad categories, right? Okay. So Ambika, whoever was first to answer gets the thing, yeah, point.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Understanding certain sounds. Yeah, can't hear sounds, but doesn't know how to. Incomprehensible.
So there's a very good example for this. So I was watching a Malayalam film, and the person was a teacher at the Alliance, and she had a bunch of students, and they were trying to understand something in French. So they were all speaking in French, but I just couldn't hear it because it sounded so much like Malayalam. The rhythm was completely off. So, I mean, it was a film, so that's fine. I mean, you don't expect the actors to learn, but that's what gave me the idea that it made me understand how if prosody doesn't follow what the person is used to, it's very difficult to understand a language. So when I go to the UK, for instance, I think I speak perfect English, but clearly not, because there are people who say, what are you saying? Can you repeat? Yeah. So my prosody must be a little different to what they're used to. And that makes all the difference in the world. There is, of course, a racial bias as well. Yeah. So people are used to hearing something from someone. So there was this very interesting discussion where a professor who was born and brought up in the UK, but she is of Korean origin. And she was talking about how when she speaks English, born and brought up and has lived there all her life, she speaks English. Some people don't hear what she says because there is a bias and that we are just not used to it. That's all.
I've experienced that actually.
Right.
Even though like you said, I think I speak quite
Good
clearly,
English, right?
but there are people who maybe because they looked at me and thought, no, she probably speaks a different kind of English. They haven't understood.
Exactly. So I asked for chocolate ice cream and she asked me to repeat 3 times that I wanted chocolate ice cream. So this is what we were talking about earlier, voiced, unvoiced.
Unvoiced, yeah.
Okay. So these are some of the problems that students can face. And clearly we can see that each is a distinct problem which needs distinct intervention. Okay. So when you say can't hear the sound, what the hell does that mean? What does it mean? How do you understand it? We all hear sounds.
Probably the frequency, what was there in the questionnaire.
That's right. That's exactly it. Okay, Chitra, can you expand on that? How did you understand that bit?
I can't expand on it.
Okay.
Is it like, can I try?
Yeah,
of
course.
So you've got the p and the b, but also in Tamil, I suppose the k, g, and h, they're all one sound. So if someone's listening to English, they might not. Have I got it backwards?
So no, that's fine.
But they're not attuned.
They can't tell the difference between the
so
three.
there is a physical basis for this.
Yeah.
Every language is physical. Yeah. So when you produce sounds, it is produced through your vocal cords. Your vocal cords vibrate at a particular frequency. And apparently, every language has a distinct frequency. Human beings can hear from 20 hertz to 20,000 hertz. And all languages fall somewhere in this range. English, for instance, in UK, British English, falls between 12,000 and 20,000 hertz. French falls between 2,000 and 4,000 hertz, which is why it's much more difficult for a French person to hear English sounds and for an English person to hear French sounds than the other way around. It's very difficult for an English person to produce the U. Yeah. It's an alien sound. You can train your ears to do this, but this is why people say adults can't learn languages, because you don't spend enough time training your ear to pick up the sounds that are missing in your language. Now, as an infant, from the age of 1 month, from the time you're born till about the age of 12 months, you're able to produce most sounds. You're able to receive most sounds. Yeah. By the age of 6 months, you begin to lose the ability to hear vowel sounds which are not in your mother tongue. And by the age of 12 months, you've lost the ability to hear any sound which is not in your mother tongue.
Oh my God.
Right? So your ears are constantly tuned to listening to sounds, and the muscles in your ear adapt to the frequency that they hear the most often.
So is that why you can say in India a lot of people speak more than one language because they hear it from birth?
Yeah, so here I'm entering the realm of speculation. So I'm very proud of the fact that I can learn languages and speak them. So, so my theory is that we moved a lot. So as a child, I was born in Mumbai, then I moved to Calcutta by the time I was 2. Then I moved to Chennai. And so I've been moving around all the time. I've heard a lot of languages. And I feel that helps me produce sounds which are not very common in my mother tongue, because my ears adapt to it faster. Yeah. So there's a very easy fix to this. Yeah. Hard, but easy in the sense, sorry about the oxymoron. It's easy in the sense it's a simple thing. You just have to keep hearing the sounds and getting feedback on whether you're producing the sound correctly or receiving the sound correctly or not. The hard part is that it takes a lot of listening. You can't do it overnight. So you train your ears, and over a period of time, you begin to hear the sounds that are missing. Once you hear it is when you can produce it. And there is the gap for our students. So that's what is happening with our students. We expect them to produce a p, yeah, but they don't produce the p because they don't have it in their sound. In Tamil, for example, the sound is not aspirated. So people say public, yeah, or punch. You don't hear the breath of air which comes out when you say punch. So punch and public are pronounced the same way, and the same sounds come out every time, right? And b is the same. So there's no difference between the voiced and the unvoiced. Okay, so what do we teach? Any ideas? What do we teach?
What do we teach in terms of pronunciation?
Yes.
Okay, so like in my breakout room also I mentioned this recently. I was going through Adrian Underhill's videos for my session, and apparently the IPA symbols are standard for all languages, and that means those kind of sound come when you see it. So what from that I understood that if you want to learn any language, it's best you look at the APA and figure out the pronunciation of that language, and then it kind of becomes easy to understand which muscles to use and from where, how much you need to use your teeth, tongue, and lips, and how far back your tongue needs to go, etc., for you to not be very difficult for you to understand all sounds.
Okay, but remember what we just said, people don't hear all the sounds. The phonemic chart has all the sounds, and you can transcribe any language using the phonemic chart. That's what it means. It means if you have to sing in Italian, if you wrote everything down in the phonemic script, you would be able to sing it. If you wanted to do it in Hindi, you can do it. The phonemic chart is flexible. Human hearing and human voice is still not flexible. So, yeah, Sooryakala?
Yeah, I just want to quote an example from Mandarin. So the single word, it's a toned language. So a single word can have several meanings. So the number 4, if you say it one way, it can mean number 4. And it can also mean a negative word like death. So they don't have the number 4 on even a list. So similar to that, I think exposing the students to the word through listening exercises, but listening to the modeled language. And I also think specifically in a classroom setting, giving targeted drilling of the word, and also continuous opportunity for them to be able to produce that perhaps through your normal questions in the classroom, or just in conversation is targeted, so they use the word in some manner again and again, so they have regular practice as well. And also kind of making them autonomous learners by seeing the fact, equipping them with online tools that they can use to improve their pronunciation are, I think, some things I feel in terms of teaching I would do pronunciation.
Okay. Anybody else?
I'd like to add on something. So one, it's a very basic thing that I've noticed, like when I teach in classes, the long vowel and the short vowel, because most of the time we are being taught in the way of alphabets, spellings. We never look at it as sounds, and obviously students don't even know that, they need to actually hear the word and not just spell the word. So whenever I tell them, just like in your regional language, even in English you have a short, it just blows their mind off sometimes. Like they don't think that there is a difference between a long vowel, short vowel. So I think establishing that somewhere also helps them to pronounce words, especially like food and good and all of those in the right way. So that is one of the things that I thought would be essential.
Can I just add something? I don't know. I don't think I've really done this, but maybe teaching the physicality of pronunciation might be helpful. Like, where does the tongue go? What do your teeth do? I don't.
Yeah.
You probably can't teach all of it because, like you said, some of it is from when you're a child, but some of it you can, and maybe that helps a little bit.
So basically, it's reception first, and then production. And in production, very targeted. So you don't have to teach the whole phonemic chart to everybody, right? If you see a student in your class has a problem understanding the distinction between, and like we said, voiced and unvoiced, that is worth correcting, because it can lead to major confusion if they don't pronounce the word correctly. If they don't say thumb with an aspirated, it's quite okay. They can say thumb and people understand. Yeah, they don't have to say they. They can say they, the way we do as Indians, and it's fine. So pick the battles. First of all, pick battles, the right ones. What does your student need in order to function on a daily basis? What are their particular problems, which means closely observing students to find out what exactly the problem is, and only targeting those issues, maybe 1 per term, maybe 2 per term, but not more than that. They can't bite off more than they can chew, right? But first of all, sensitizing them. So for example, if you do a minimal pair, drill, right? So instead of telling them this is public and this is Beethoven, so per and per, what you do is you ask them to identify the sound they hear when you produce it. When they make a mistake, you have to give them feedback. That is how they train their ear to pick it up. So unless they can train their ear to pick it up, they're not going to be able to produce it. Okay. Then you teach them the physicality. How does this sound come about? What do you do with your tongue and your teeth and your muscles in your cheeks? How do you produce it? So that would be a step-by-step process to doing it. Then you can follow it up with things like tongue twisters and other things which will reinforce the sound consolidation. Okay. So you can see it's a long process. If we try and do this with every sound, clearly we'll be there till the cows come home. It's not going to happen, which is why it needs to be targeted. Anybody has any other suggestions? Yeah.
I have a quick suggestion.
Sure.
So when you say teaching the practicality of it and the way that it's produced, I always used to have and I have it here somewhere, a small mirror, and I used to ask the students to also get a cheap mirror. Sometimes when I had a chance, I'd go and buy little ones, and that way they could see me produce it, and then they'd have to look at themselves to do it. So that helped a lot too.
Right. and also maybe drawing attention to the sounds that they already produce, which are very similar. So, for example, in India, in Tamil Nadu, the ra sound, rubbish, is a tricky sound because most people say round. Yeah, it's more pronounced more like the Spanish than like an English sound. So just teaching them that it's very similar to the Tamil r. It's almost identical to the Tamil r, makes all the difference in the world. Then it becomes an easy sound to produce. Okay. Should we teach this?
Yes.
I would say no.
I
You're
don't
wasting
think
time.
so. Yeah.
I would say you're wasting a lot of time. It took me at least 3 terms to learn this, and 3 terms because I insisted my students learn it. So that was for me a way of teaching myself the phonemic chart. It is important that you know it. It's not important that your students know it. They need to know if they're having trouble with a particular sound. Sure, I'd point it out to them. Yeah. The long and short sounds that you talked about. In India here, we mix up food and foot. So food is often food, right? And it's pronounced like foot. So making that distinction between the short and the long sound, sure, you can point it out on the phonemic chart and show them how it progresses and how it's made. But other than that, what's the point? By the end of the term, they're not going to remember. They don't have 3 terms in which to practice it.
Okay, but there's an argument that if you teach them the phonemic chart, they can check pronunciation on their
Well,
own.
these days everything
But
is
now everything is
on
online.
the phone, yeah, and you can click on Cambridge Dictionary, and
but,
if you can,
If they use the right dictionary, it's fine. They'll get the audio and it's fine.
right? So
But I've had the experience where people have used Google and got some ridiculous,
yes.
like imperfect became imperfect,
Yeah,
which is
yeah.
not even a word.
right. So I standard instruction use only Cambridge Dictionary,
Yes.
yeah, and that's a quicker fix than
Yeah.
trying to teach the phonemic chart per se.
Shailaja ma'am,
Please
you know,
don't
when you
say
show
ma'am. I feel like 100 years old.
it's an
Tell them.
occupational hazard for me. So when you wrote what to teach phonemic chart, I nodded, and I'm not so sure about the others who did not. But what I meant was, you don't have to teach them, because even I'm struggling to learn it. Like you said, you don't have 3 terms to learn it. I know it's a difficult thing. Only very advanced people who are learning phonology would do that.
Yep.
But I would, you know, what I feel is it's always easier to put it in circulation and let the children know it and decode it, and be able to get the awareness of from where the sound is coming from their mouth, which muscles are being used, you know, so that they can see the sound and see, so that it's all physical for them. That's one. Second, sometimes when we make mistakes pronouncing a particular word, or you know, pronounce a particular letter, what happens is on the phonemic chart, they're neighbors with the other sounds that we are you know, merging with. So sometimes it's a good idea to have it in circulation. Obviously, tell them there are so many sounds in English language, like 44 sounds, and this is how we do this. You don't have to learn it, but this is the depth of you know, what you need to accomplish when you do become an advanced, you know, speaker.
I would tend to agree with that. Not spend too much time on the phonemic chart, just as you said, absolutely. But maybe like 15 minutes for the first 3 or 4 classes, just familiarize them, so that they are able to look up the pronunciation even on the dictionary, online dictionary. They can see the phonemic symbols and it makes sense to them, along with hearing it on the audio. So not teaching them as such, but familiarization.
Just make them aware that these are
I used to find it interesting, most of them.
So they find it. So this comes from my personal experience, yeah. So because I've run through the whole gamut of things. So I've made them transcribe the poem by, I forget his name. I transcribed it in phonemic script, and then they had to figure out what the poem was saying. So Owl and the Pussycat. Yeah. So the thing is, the phonemic chart is a tool, and it's a very useful tool when they're making mistakes. Like you said, if you want to show them how the neighboring sounds are formed and what the, you know, what the physicality means and how it relates to the sound that they produce, you can absolutely use the phonemic chart. But this is a personal opinion, so and I'm just putting it out there that it might not be a great idea to just spend a lot of time. If you have a 20-hour session, spending an hour on learning the phonemic chart is not a good use of your time in class. You can absolutely give them a link to the BBC pronunciation.
That's what I used to do.
Yeah.
And those who are more interested in the pronunciation can look it up and
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. But again, if they are not sensitized to the difference between law or and walk or wash, they're not going to hear the difference, right? So, and is there any sense in making them learn that? Does it make any sense whether they say law or even law? Because in the US it's law, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what's the point of teaching them that that's how you pronounce it? That's a British pronunciation. Why plug a British pronunciation? And as Josie can tell us, in Australia, it's probably pronounced very differently. I hesitate to go there.
I was merely trying to be defensive, saying that I'm not making these sounds up. They're there in the chart. Like, these are not my sounds. So just to be on the safer side.
Some course books use the phonemic symbols.
Absolutely. Yeah. So that was my take on it. Yeah. Would you teach this?
Yeah.
I think
everybody's scared to say yes. No.
No, I think we discussed it in our group in saying that for reception more than for production is to be able to recognize it and understand. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So when they speak with someone, they should be able to decipher what's happening. Yeah. And all the connected sounds can sound very alien. And I have a student who is French, and she was so up in arms because she has an Indian interlocutor, a person she meets with on a regular basis. And she says, I don't understand a word of what he says. So, there's a real disconnect there. So maybe teaching them, sensitizing them.
We use connecting sounds in every language, I guess. When we speak a language quickly, there is a tendency to connect words. So probably making them more aware of that, the fact that, we do connect words as when we are speaking at a faster pace, that's useful for them. Not teaching it per se.
And maybe then giving them the tools to be able to recognize the sounds. So what I tell my students, and I think they found this useful, a couple of them, is I said, if you're meeting somebody from Britain or if you're meeting somebody from Australia, just go on to BBC and listen to BBC. Just close your eyes and just listen to the sounds. Let it wash over you. You don't have to understand it. But once you pick up the rhythm, the words will separate in your head. But it's important that you recognize the rhythm of that language. Yeah. So listen to Australia. Every country has a broadcasting station. And if you work with native speakers, go ahead and listen to their speech. The Scottish, for example. Imagine having a meeting with a Scottish person.
Someone from Glasgow.
Yeah.
Shailaja and others, I think because I also deal with really small children, what I do is if they ask, I tell them. Like, what are you doing? What you doing? If somebody says, ma'am, but it didn't sound like, it sounds like chew to me. And that's when you get into it, saying a very smart question. And, this happens because we're saying it, together and things. So I think answer when asked.
Yes, absolutely. I agree with you 100%. Also, Sita, you were talking about gonna wanna. And it's so irritating when they use it. But when I do connected speech, what I do is I tell them, these two would combine and this is what you would hear. So don't get thrown if you hear it. Gonna is just going to. And you can absolutely say going to and it's perfectly fine. In fact, while I was researching for this particular workshop, I came across this very interesting research that was carried out. And one of the conclusions was, for a non-native speaker, it's really good to enunciate every word. Connected speech is not required at all for comprehension. Sometimes it's more detrimental because if you are able to enunciate the words, people will understand your message. In your attempt to connect everything, you might make a mess of it.
Yes. And I've had students who've sort of been through that, or who've been through accent training or accent neutralization or something, and it starts sounding very, very confusing actually.
Yeah.
And then they struggle to kind of come out of that as well.
Right. Okay, so I hope this is making your teaching job much easier now, yeah? Yeah. Word stress, would you teach word stress?
I think yes, a little bit.
Uh-huh.
Because
Yes.
I don't know if yes a little bit makes sense, but words like this has happened to me, and so I remember it. The word event. So because the stress is on the second syllable, is how it should be said. But here a lot of people say event. And so it sounds like two. So unless you know it in context, you might not even understand, or someone doesn't even understand the word.
Yeah.
And so the entire meaning is lost. So then in that case, yes, sometimes it's necessary.
And also the suffixes like psychology. That's a very common.
Yes.
So I think that in those areas it's very useful.
Similarly with economics, economy.
And some things which are just irritating to the ear, like environment.
That's one thing they're convinced about.
Oh, yes.
So pick your battles. They don't have to stress every word correctly because it's perfectly comprehensible. But to give you an example, my daughter's boyfriend is British. So the last time we were talking and he said, let's go on the carousel ride. And to any other Indian, it would have been perfectly comprehensible. He was at a loss to understand what I meant. So Josie, what we meant was a carousel. Carousel?
Yeah, carousel.
So he was stressing the wrong thing and he didn't understand. So
Okay, got it now.
yeah. So sentence stress.
Yes.
But sentence stress is mostly useful as contrastive stress. Extremely useful as contrastive stress. Yeah. So this is something I would work on quite a bit. Intonation.
Yes, please.
Yes.
Definitely, yes.
Otherwise, everyone just sounds like robots.
Yeah.
And not just robots, it's that Indian languages can sound extremely harsh. And I realized this when, again, my daughter's boyfriend, he thought the place we were visiting, two people were having a very animated, wonderful discussion. He thought they were fighting. And that's when I realized that, we sound aggressive. And we carry the same intonation patterns into English. And clearly that's a problem.
Pitch is higher.
Pitch is higher, yeah.
I had this problem when I was in Vijayawada. I don't know Telugu. And I went there in the evening. I found a few ladies get together and they just in front of my door. And I hear them talking very seriously with each other and with actions and shouting. And I really thought they were fighting.
Yeah.
Slowly opened the door and saw they were all having a hearty laugh. That's when I realized it is actually a normal conversation.
Right. I think that's true. I don't think we realize it. Unless something like this happens. So intonation, especially because we kind of tend to have a tone which goes up most of the time. For tone to go down, that needs practice, that needs a lot of sensitization to the fact that when tone goes down, things sound more polite at the end of a sentence.
And
What's
also
your name?
conveying meaning through intonation. I don't know if we have that in Indian languages. I don't think so, right?
I don't think Indian languages
like
are
for questions, for statements, we have different intonation patterns, different types of questions. We don't have that.
The only thing that I can recall is the question. All questions have a raising intonation, right? So they just reflect that exactly in English. So are you coming is never are you coming? It's always you coming.
You coming.
Say that and they think, okay, that's a question.
But that's the thing. In English, you can have right. But in English, you can have "Are you coming?" You can have "Are you coming?"
I think WH questions have a different intonation, and yes, no questions have some different one.
So understanding that tone going down is more polite is important.
And also with question tags. Negative and positive. So some are just checking, and
Okay, pausing.
Yes.
Yes,
Very
Yes.
important.
Yes.
definitely, very important.
Because otherwise the idea is that to speak fluently, you must speak fast
Yes.
without
Without a
pausing.
break. Yeah,
Don't
Or
pause.
where you pause at the wrong place,
place.
which is
Yes.
worse because that completely throws you off, right?
Yeah.
You can't understand it at all. So, and prosody. So prosody would be a little bit of all of this put together, which makes the music of the language. So uh, my focuses would be on this, but this is something that needs a lot of listening and for people to train their ear to pick up the rhythm. I don't think there's anything we can do to teach prosody in that sense. We can do jazz chants and things like that. We can get people to understand, but it's like taking a horse to the water, right? You can't make them drink. So unless your ear picks up the rhythm and you're able to replicate it over time, it's not going to happen. And as a teacher, you cannot force it. You can only provide the tools. Okay, and the last thing is using strategies. These are some of the strategies that are commonly used. They make sense to you? Do you want to talk about any of them? Do you use any of them?
The second one is a little bit tricky in English. It's possible, but tricky because, like the word the word gigantic, the same G in the same word has two different sounds, which is a bit mean. But
English is a very mean language.
It
Other
is
languages
quite
are
cruel
so
to
much
myself.
more uniform.
So that for students who are maybe like lower level, newer to the language and not enough sort of exposure to English, they might struggle with it. But as you get more comfortable with the language, it becomes easier.
I used to struggle with that word. When I was younger, I used to say gigantic, and
Yeah.
I had some cousins visiting from the US, and they laughed at me so much. I felt so bad that day. But yes, it's a difficult one to learn.
Now you can shout and say linguistic racism.
Is that a thing now?
Yeah, it's a thing now.
But then what I wanted to ask for the previous slide as well is regarding sentence stress, prosody, etc. Would you focus on that at the beginner or elementary stage as well, or maybe a little later? So because this is something we discussed during our in our breakout rooms as well. We had a little difference of opinion about it.
Okay. Does anybody want to take that?
I think connected speech and pausing is something that needs to be started off at the beginning itself, including phonemic chart, but you won't be teaching the phonemic chart, of course, as sounds, as words, but I think word stress, I think, would be for a higher, as we progress, is what my opinion is, especially sentence stress. I also do that with elementary lessons, with children, with middle school, elementary, primary children, is when they're reading as well, they're like reading very fast. They do not, they don't take a break even at the full stop. So I kind of related to, I say, well, that if the train is going on a track, it needs to get off and put the passengers down. So you need to stop it. So then just relating that, and I think that's important at that stage that they understand. So when they're reading, and then they kind of, I think that reflects in their speech as well, if they're speaking, because they might not necessarily be speaking fast, but when you kind of mention it when they're reading as well, when they're producing language, they do the same thing. So I think those two things in primary, I think we can start elementary.
Anybody else? Abhishek?
In terms of pausing, we can also make use of pausing for giving, like adding to the dialogue, as in the sense to create suspense or whatever when we're speaking, right? To give the effect of when we're speaking out any dialogue or anything. When we're speaking on a given topic, the pause also gives it, adds meaning, a lot of meaning to it. So that fact, I thought it was.
Right. So maybe getting them, even at the elementary level, to say the same sentence with a pause in a particular place for effect and without a pause. I'm sure they'll be able to tell you which one sounds better, with the pause or without the pause. So yeah, I think with anything related to pronunciation, it is on a need to know basis. I would teach pronunciation at an elementary level because, in my opinion, You start as you mean to go. You want to learn a language, you learn the language properly from the beginning. It's easier than having to unlearn and unpick mistakes that you've already picked up along the way. So yeah, definitely I would work on it. To give you an example, when we teach French, when I used to teach French at the Alliance, we didn't put anything up on the board on the first day. It was all pronunciation. It was all verbal drills and repetition, because French is written very differently from the way it's pronounced. So once they see it, they're going to mix up the pronunciation. They're going to mess up the pronunciation. So it was all sounds, and it really works. So maybe you can try that with your elementary students. I'm sure it will work.
So focus on the listening and the understanding first.
Yes,
And then
reception.
go on to the production.
Yes,
Receptive first.
receptive first, followed by production. Okay. Some ideas you can add to this list.
What is jazz chants?
So jazz chants focus on prosody. Okay.
Okay.
So you're teaching them the rhythm of the language. What do you do? I am a teacher. So, you have something which is the same. You take up different professions, and the same sound pattern is repeated. So that would be a jazz chant. It can be fun, especially with young learners. It's huge fun. And it's something that we used to do when we play Ringa Ringa Roses, Pocket Full of Posies. That's what it was. It was oranges and lemons. Yeah. Those are kind of repetitive rhymes that we used to keep saying, and that helped us with the language, to pick up the rhythm of the language.
So I came across jazz chants and I wanted to use them in my classroom, but I was wondering how should I go about it, because I thought I just couldn't get myself. I mean, saying a nursery rhyme or even playing that game Ringa Ringa Roses is a lot different from. So how do I introduce that, and how do I get students to start singing it, especially the
There's a
non-speakers?
really nice YouTube video by an expert. I forget her name now. But if you can put into the YouTube search and search box, teaching jazz chants, it will come up. Yeah. So there's this
I
lady
think I've
who's-
used some of her
Yeah,
videos.
yeah.
She's really good.
She's really good. And step by step, she gives you a lot of instruction on how to go about creating a jazz chant, how to sort of you practice it so it becomes second nature to you. You can't do it one fine day. You just get up and say, okay, today I'm doing a jazz chant in class. Not possible. Which is why it was so bad when I did it, because I've never used it.
Is it Carolyn Graham?
That's right. Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Carolyn Graham.
This one I have played and it's great fun. So if your students have problems with some sound, silent mouthing, so I just get them to, they have to exaggerate the sound, yeah? Without saying the word, they have to mime it. And the others have to guess which word they're miming. Okay? And it's a lot of fun. Okay, and when you do minimal pairs, always followed by feedback for each sound. So foot, food. Am I using the long sound or the short sound? You hold up the sign, and then if they've got it right, you say, perfect, that's the sound, food, food. And then if they've got the wrong sound, you say, no, I'm sorry, that's not the right sound. It was the long one.
And Shailaja, what's shadow reading?
Shadow reading is where this they can do on their own. So there are many websites where you can read the text as you hear somebody read it.
Okay.
So you read along with them.
It gives that listening exposure as well.
It's not about listening, it's about developing the same rhythm of the language. So you can't read slower or faster. You have to keep pace.
I think we had the Coca-Cola, remember?
Oh God, yes.
Coke, yeah.
From Malawi.
You could even try this with a film clip. So give them the script and mute the sound. And they have to, as you play the film, the students have to read the dialogues.
Okay.
With the same emotions. And I've tried this So Harry Potter, the scene where they're all in the what's that place? Ministry of Magic. Yeah. And it was hilarious fun. Yeah.
I think the Ambika's college had this competition.
Okay.
Their
Yeah,
freshers.
we did. Yeah, we were given a scene and asked to make some.
Oh, that'll be fun.
It
Speaking of
was
the
really
dialogues.
fun. Yeah. Okay, so what are your key takeaways?
Don't teach the phonemic chart.
Yeah.
Just took me 17 years to figure that out.
Yeah.
Do focus on problem areas.
Do focus on problem areas, yes.
Yeah.
Need to know pronunciation instruction.
Right.
Yeah.
Need to know basis only.
Yes.
Reception before production. Very
Production. Absolutely right.
Okay, and my next question. Any question in your questionnaire that you still want to discuss?
I think that's clear. We had the question about frequency, which you answered.
Yeah, that's it.
But the research on that is really amazing. There isn't too much research on frequency and how people can tune their ears, but this is something that people who have hearing problems. So it's that industry which is working on it, actually, with people who manufacture hearing aids and things like that.
Right.
I think this applies to animals as well, because they say dogs can hear certain
higher
frequency. Yes,
yeah.
yes.
are inaudible to the human
That's
ear.
right, which is why the dog whistle is, you can't hear it, right?
Yeah.
But dogs can.
And firecrackers have a bigger impact on animals than
yes.
Yeah. That time of the year is fast approaching.
I know.
That's got to do with the audible frequencies that animals can have a much, they can hear much lower frequencies than us.
Yeah, that's what we discussed earlier. So
Yeah.
must be painful for them.
okay, so any statements that you would like to discuss? No, otherwise we are at the end of the session. Thank you very much for being a wonderful.
Thank you very much.
And
you,
if you
Shailaja.
have any further questions, more research required.
Very smart.
I know, nice.
Thank you. I took the liberty of sending Jazz Challenge, which I recently downloaded for everybody.
Okay,
Thank you.
excellent. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm sorry, I
Ciao.
think I ran over time by a lot.
That's okay.
It was not
worth it.
noticed.
Yeah, it was
worth
worth
it.
it.
Really worth it.
Okay. I'm just putting
Definitely,
some
I
of
got a
the.
few minutes of data in from you. Thank you.
So I'm sharing some links that I used while preparing for this. I thought the articles were really interesting, so I'm going to put them in the chat box.
Okay. Thank you, Shailaja. I'm like, I have a lot of information in my head that I need to sort out and properly think about and how to use it in my classes. And I'm sure that's what everybody else is thinking as well. So it was wonderful, your entire presentation. So thank you. And I'm going to hand it over to Soorya now, who's going to do the resource review segment of TTT for you guys.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Shailaja, for that. So it's going to be a very short resource review. Some of you might already be aware of Jolly Phonics. What is Jolly Phonics? Anyone has an idea already, or have used Jolly Phonics? Yes, Meghna.
So they have high frequency words. They have level 7 or some levels, and then they use those words to get the pronunciation out. Like how do you say it? How to pronounce a letter. So SATPIN. Those are the levels, and they give you a lot of vocabulary to deal with. It doesn't necessarily teach you alphabets in the order, but it teaches you in levels of high frequency letters. Is that correct?
Yes, okay. So it's on the lines. So what is Jolly Phonics? Basically, it's a synthetic phonetic program. And it's been accredited by the Department of Education, UK. It's a 7-year program which begins from as early as the child is ready to learn sounds and words. As you might be aware, we could start reading storybooks to a baby who was born. I remember reading endless stories to my son. He was 2 years old. He wouldn't get to sleep, and he would just pick up books and give to me, and I would continue reading. I think that helped his reading journey a lot. It not only teaches letter sounds, but it also teaches spelling, punctuation, and grammar. So it's a progressive phonic program where you begin with letter sounds, individual sounds, and then making three-letter words, and then diagraphs, etc. And it has a systematic approach, which is backed by resources to just support teachers. Today, I am going to just share the free resources that's available for you to just pick up and use immediately. And obviously, if you want to go and look into it further, I'll just tell you how to do that as well. All right, so the official website, you don't have to take down any of this. We'll share in a follow-up email. The official Jolly Learning website is the jollylearning.co.uk. The resource bank, which I'll be sharing with you, includes worksheets and teaching resources that are all free to use. And if you would like to train yourself further to become a Jolly Phonic trainer, you could either do it two ways. One is you could get yourself trained by a local trainer who has been, who's completed the whole training with Jolly Phonics directly. So they'll be able to do a workshop. I did one similar to that with a trainer in India. So she basically gave a 5-day online workshop doing the level 1, which is the letter sounds. Or you could choose the CPD, which is an online self-learning platform by Jolly Phonics itself that you can get on, enroll yourself, pay online, and then it's a self-access course if you're cut out to do that and you are a self-learning sort of a person. So I'm going to just quickly run through the website with you. Give me a moment.
Sorry, what ages is it aimed at? Is it only for children?
Yeah, so Josie, so basically this is for beginner learners, and I feel like it can be adapted to adult learners, but you will not be teaching it as a program for adult learners. You could use the resources, expose yourself to the resources. And for example, one of my adult learners who's having a general English class, I've given her the app. And I said, if you ever want to listen to a particular sound, you could just go click on that sound and listen to it. And some high frequency words, like Meghna mentioned, like the, and, you know, they might not be pronouncing it correctly. For them just to practice and drill for themselves, that could be used. So it could be used for, as a program, it could be used for very young learners who are just beginning to learn the language and to read. And it's a whole reading program on its own that goes on to spelling and to reading and grammar. But it can also be used in isolation in your classrooms with adult learners, and you can adapt it to your lessons. Yeah.
Thank you.
So if you go to the resource section right here, the website is quite easy to follow. So everything is on there. I'm just going to show you one part of it. So the activities and the worksheet part. If you see, there are word blending boxes and there are activity sheets. So if you're kind of introducing a set of sounds, for example, the first set is SATPN. The reason the alphabets are introduced in that order is because the number of 3-letter words and 2-letter words that can be used in that combination are the most. And those letters can be produced easily by the child, can be written easily, and the number of combination words that these 5 letters produce together are more. And so there is a pattern in which the letters are produced. So that's that. You can explore the website, and the link will be provided to you. In addition to that, I'm going to quickly run through the app as well, which is the Jolly Phonics app. Okay, so the Jolly Phonic app is free to download on Android devices. For Apple devices, there is it's a paid version for Apple devices. So you could, once you're having your students learn this, or you want to use the Jolly Phonic program, it's a very good tool to use for them to self-study, for you to have on your phone. And it also has an assessment component to it. So I'm just going to quickly run this for you. And if you can see, the letters are introduced in groups. So the SAT pin, as we call it, is introduced first, and the rest, and so on. And you don't move on to the second group unless your learners are completely, perfect, or so to say, they are fluent in that group of sounds. And the icons on the app, you can actually click them and it makes the sound. So again, reception before production. So I think it is a very good tool for that. Okay, and then we go to the alternative sounds. So two sounds put together and two letters put together, and the sound that it makes. And so there's two groups of alternate sounds that's also introduced. And the tricky words that do not follow the pattern. So, and again, these are in groups. So we introduce the tricky words, and if you would like to, the worksheets, and there are flashcards that you can use with it for your students to be able to practice those words. Tricky words are also referred to as high frequency words, that are words that repeat themselves often in any thing. So there are some games that the students can play. This is more appealing to young learners. Yeah, and each letter sound is introduced with a song or a jingle. So pronunciation with a jingle, and there is action words that that go with it. So when you introduce it with that, they always refer to the song and remember each letter. So, and the student can go back and play the song and listen to it and practice it as well. Yeah, and there is a pupil assessment part to the app that the teacher or the trainer can use, where you can do a pre-assessment of the phonic awareness, and then you could do a post-assessment of the student, or an assessment midway, perhaps when you've introduced two groups, and see their assessment after that. So that lets you, yeah. And then there's, when you start the assessment, you'll be able to do it. Yeah, so there's a phonic assessment that you can click on start, and then there's a couple of sessions that you start. Yep, that's about it. And yes. So yeah, any questions?
Just one thing, Surya, is there an option for the students to record it on the app?
I don't think they can record it. They can't record it. Maybe you could do it other ways. Maybe just record it on WhatsApp, or yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think it's very enjoyable for young learners, especially the songs.
Yeah.
There are some apps that we can recommend to students if in case you want to see, say, for example, them using the application. Like there's an app called the X Screen Recorder, for example, on Android devices, with which you can ask the student to record all the actions that they're performing on their phone. And therefore, they'll be able to share their screen, all the thing as a video file to us. So we could always assess that and get back to them with proper feedback.
I think there was another app which one of my students was using called English Speaking, where you have a conversation at the beginning, you listen to the conversation first, and then the next you practice it with the AI partner. And then the third thing is you record it. And fourth, you listen to how you have spoken. Compare it with the first one which you heard. So there you actually receive, and then you're trying to produce. Yes. And unless they finish that, they can't go to the next.
Okay, awesome. Cool. that's a wrap then, Surya, from your end.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. I think Shailaja and Sita had to go away because they had something important lined up next. So, although she isn't here, I really want to thank her because I think it was a very insightful and a resourceful training of pronunciation, especially, although we all understand reception is important, a lot of times I think we stress so much on the production part of it that we kind of forget, although we know it. So, just kind of giving us that reminder works. And in fact, like how Nikita said, there's a lot of information that's so new. So I'm actually going to sit down and put them in categories and, try to comprehend one by one and add it into my classes as well. So I'd like to thank Shailaja very much from us as well as the thinking team for this session. And Surya, thanks a lot for the resource review as well. In fact, I think in the Jolly Phonics that you showed, there have been so many instances where even adult learners get excited with these rhymes and jingles, So definitely, I think not just for kids, like I think we might need to explore more as trainers and see which we can adapt to the classes. But I think definitely I would explore Jolly Phonic website resource bank to bring into my elementary and pre-intermediate levels especially.
Yeah.
So
We could make a gas chant out of the Jolly Phonics.
Watch the video and then try and adapt it from the Jolly Phonic website. So thanks a lot, Surya, for that. And Nikita, as always, for moderating it very smoothly and, interacting with all the participants. Thank you so much, Nikita, for taking up that responsibility. And thanks to all you guys who've attended the workshop today. I hope that you guys had a wonderful time just like we did. And I will definitely thank Shailaja from your end also. I'm seeing quite a bit in chat. Definitely, I will convey that to her. And we hope to see you at the next TTT session next month. So we'll keep you posted, and all the resources that we've been talking about would be sent out in the follow-up emails. And I will see you guys in a month's time. So have a wonderful, wonderful weekend, long weekend. And I mean, that's for us in India.
In India, yes.
We've got, and thank you especially, Josie, for joining from Melbourne. It was definitely wonderful to see.
It was lovely to meet you all, and I had a lovely time, and I learnt a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Wonderful, wonderful. Good to hear that. Yes.
What is the weekend?
What is the weekend?
Well, no, because
we've only got one more day.
This month we have had so many holidays already because of some puja or another. We've had so many holidays. I'm working all Saturdays this month at the school.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah, 6-day week.
Enjoy your Monday then.
Yes,
exactly.
Monday also I have compulsory attendance. I have to go into school, flag hoisting, and then come back home.
So yeah, even me.
If anything, the only thing I would like to ask the teachers over here is, if any of you handle teenagers, how do you handle them?
Yeah, that's
a different thing. You have to do a session by itself.
It would be very helpful in the future if someone would do a session on how to handle
that's a good topic actually.
Students.
For a training session.
Because that'd be very helpful for someone like me with very little experience, but teaching 9th and 10th graders right now.
Absolutely. Yes, Abhishek, I will just, I'll definitely take that into account.
Consideration, yeah.
Yes. Awesome.
Just start your session.
So much. Yeah, Meghna, sorry.
Just start your session with some difficult word on the board, Take them off it. And then call them one by one back, like, okay, by the way, do a simpler job.
Yeah, keep them on their toes all the time. Keep them, challenge. The challenge should be high, on the higher side.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you all so much for interacting.
Happy weekend, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.